Good evening once again. I am Stephanie Ruhle, and welcome to the Midweek Nightcap. As the war with Iran seems nowhere near an end, the nation is tightening its grip on the Strait of Hormuz. Surprise, surprise. Today, Iran fired on 3 separate ships in the waterway and seized 2 of them. This is while the U.S. is still blockading Iranian ports. The attack on these ships adds even more uncertainty to the situation, especially considering Donald Trump declared that he would extend the ceasefire yesterday. Trump is already back to one of his previous talking points, teasing that a new round of peace talks with Iran could begin as soon as Friday, though there seems to be no other evidence to show that those talks are imminent or even a possibility. So it seems like the U.S. and Iran are now in a standoff again, as Pakistan, along with the rest of the world, is pushing for some kind of resolution to this conflict that has now caused a global energy crisis and rattled the world's economy. We've got a lot to cover tonight, so let's get started and bring in our nightcap. David Rohde is here, MS Now senior national security reporter. Ron Insana, veteran financial journalist and publisher of The Message of the Markets on Substack. John Avlon, journalist and host of the Bulwark podcast that seriously you should listen to, How to Fix It with John Avlon, and my dear friend Eddie Glaude, Princeton professor and MS Now contributor. David, you know we're going to you first. Clearly the president wants to restart peace talks again. You know, every investor that I speak to is like, yeah, the president wants out. He wants out. He wants out. He might want out, but it seems like Iran is saying take a hike. Like, how do these Iranian attacks on these ships change that situation?
To show that the Iranians are saying take a hike. I mean, the president, he keeps changing his message. One of his messages is that the problem is that the Iranians are so divided. So I asked Vali Nasser, he's a leading expert on Iran, do you think the Iranian regime is divided? Is it the fault? And he told me, I think they are divided on whether to trust Donald Trump or not. One group says Islamabad is a waste of time and Trump is not serious. Another group says. So his changing rhetoric, these constant threats of destroying the civilization, then he backs off with a ceasefire of 2 weeks, then it's a ceasefire, an indefinite ceasefire, and now it's 4 or 5 days. The Iranians don't trust Donald Trump himself because he's so erratic.
You don't say. John, here's the thing. The president clearly seems, I'm not going to say intent on ending the war, but at the very least anxious to get this thing done. But Iran is more willing to wait it out. Given that, what kind of deal at best is Trump going to get from them?
None.
In a word, none.
Well, I mean, I'm just sorry here. I mean, you know, the Iranians are divided about whether they can trust Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
So is the rest of the, so's his own administration.
Yeah, but beyond that, I mean, like, Trump just declared a ceasefire that was supposed to be sort of open-ended and definitive, and the next day, boom, right? You know, stick in the eye. Why? Because they recognize that Trump actually wants to turn the page. He doesn't like the TV show anymore, but he started something he can't finish, which is always the problem with striking Iran, which is why, you know, this hasn't been done previously. So he can try to, you know, reality distortion is filled out of it, but it's not going to affect the facts on the ground or the implications for the rest of the world, let alone the region.
Let's talk about the political miscalculation, because the Washington Post is reporting that the Pentagon told Congress that clearing the mines out of the Strait of Hormuz will take 6 months.
That's right.
And that doesn't even start until the war is over. Given that, you are looking at gas prices staying elevated through the midterms. And I am quite sure Democrats are going to run on that. How much of a miscalculation was this?
I think it's a devastating miscalculation in the sense that we're not talking about prices anymore. We're going to be talking about shortages.
Oh, excellent point.
Right? And
yes.
So we're already seeing it in Asia, South Asia. We're already seeing it throughout the global South. We're going to see the impact of this in terms of supply chains, in terms of the very ways in which people go about living their lives. So we're talking about prices at the pump. That's one thing. But what does it mean when we just don't have it anymore, right? And we're going to have to pay exponentially more for airline tickets.
And this for a war that you can't even find an American voting bloc to be behind. Take us there. Help us understand what it would look like for the global economy, right? If global economy and energy, if it takes that long to clear the strait.
Well, you have none, right? In certain parts of the world, you literally will have
Explain
no fertilizer. So, first of all, right now, there's almost a moratorium on oil production in the Middle East because all the tanks are full. And in order to drain them, you have to be able to load the tankers, move the oil to the rest of the world. delete those tankers, or I should deplete those tankers, and then start production again so you can start filling them back up. That in of itself takes weeks, if not months. And then getting the oil or any other product from the Strait to other parts of the world can take weeks to months. So there's already an enormous tail on what's transpired thus far. And so if you look out several more weeks, several more months, this could be the remainder of the year where things like oil, natural gas, fertilizer, helium, plastics may not be available. And Eddie mentioned the Global South. I think if there's one place on the planet that is going to be absolutely devastated by this, given that you cannot grow food without adequate amounts of fertilizer, it's going to be the poorest nations on the planet. And they are in for a crisis of pandemic-style proportions if this were to persist for a period of time.
Holy smoke. Then everything these gentlemen have just laid out just puts more and more and more pressure on Donald Trump. So at best, is he hoping to get an Iran deal that basically looks like Obama's deal? And if that is what he gets, how's that look on the world stage? How do you spin that?
How do you spin that in this country? Because it is going to be very similar. He's going to have to send some money back to Iran, these billions of dollars of frozen assets that they have.
$20 billion.
Yes, and they're going to want some sort of nuclear.
Do you remember how much Republicans? John was probably a Republican back then.
No, I was not a
jumping on it.
Stephanie, you know better than that.
But like for real, like, do you remember what that was like?
They savaged the Obama administration for this, and then the short-term strategy right now. And one of our editors here at MS asked us to look at this today. We called 6 experts about who will blink first in terms of the economic pain: Iran with a blockade, or the U.S. and the world economy. 6 of the 7 said the U.S. is going to blink first.
Huh.
Because of the cliff you're talking about.
Right, but that's with Iran suffering economic damage equal to its GDP.
But they have lived under sanctions for years. Right. Mm-hmm. They're playing a long-term game. I was told if this continues to the end of April, all of the pain you see in Asia now, the lack of gas, is going to hit the U.S. And Trump has to make an Obama-like deal.
Just in time for summer.
Well, but this also was the fallacy, the idea that after the Ayatollah was taken out, that you would see people taking to the streets and taking back. Instead, you get a consolidation of nationalism when your country is attacked, right?
Wow.
Even if you don't like the regime. And this isn't rocket science, but this is what we're facing right now. And those, geopolitical implications you're talking about, the economic implications. The United States wasn't sold the case for this war. Mm-hmm. So there's not going to be an appetite. Even if the members of the cabinet are coming on stage saying, just, suck up the gas prices for the good of the country and the world, that's not sticking because it hasn't been sold.
You know who else wasn't sold on the case for this war? Our European allies.
That's right.
Now you've got the UK and France leading an international coalition of 30 countries working together to try to reopen the Strait. And what country is not in there? The United States of America. Are we seeing the consequences of Donald Trump super bashing NATO over the last decade?
Well, absolutely. We're seeing the consequences of that in the sense that the post-World War II consensus has collapsed. We're seeing the consequences of that as the U.S. cedes its leadership role. The historian Timothy Snyder says what we're witnessing in real time is superpower suicide.